This It's On moment is brought to you by On Nicotine Pouches.
If you're just tuning in, we're on the first tee at Fairway Links, and Spencer is up last.
Steve, he's got to be feeling the heat. Everyone's had a monster drive so far.
No doubt, Sue. A hush falls over the foursome as Spencer brings his club back.
Oh, Steve, it looks like it's on.
Products for tobacco consumers 21 years of age or older. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Ruthless invaders, a defenseless planet. Battle beyond the stars. A lone youth escapes on a last-ditch mission that begins at the edge of the universe. The story of a boy who finds more than he expected.
Make them burn.
And all he can handle.
Does your species have kissing?
Oh, yes. We have that.
Try one. That's a hot dog. It comes from Earth. Do you like it?
There's no dog in this. Soybean meal, niacin, dextrose, and sodium nitrate flavoring.
That's what we call meat back home. Battle beyond the stars. Starring Richard Thomas, George Papard, Robert Vaughn, John Saxon, a battle beyond time, beyond space.
They take fire!
That ends in a desperate gamble.
They'll be able to board us.
It won't make any difference.
Get that hatch open!
Battle beyond the stars.
Welcome to the projection booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me once again is Mr. Chris Stachiw.
I prefer to be called John Boy.
Also back in the booth is Father Malone.
This is the movie that answers the question, what if the Millennium Falcon was a really fucking hot woman?
Technically, the Millennium Falcon is a hot woman, Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
No, that's her personality. I'm talking about the fucking shape of the woman.
Oh, the ship itself. Yes, half chub already. You're right.
Sci-Fi July continues with a look at Jimmy Murakami's Battle Beyond the Stars. Released in 1980, the film stars Richard Thomas as Shad, an innocent whose way of life is threatened by the villainous Sador, played by John Saxon, a self-made Frankenstein, Casanova Frankenstein, really, who has conquered many worlds. It's up to Shad to put together a ragtag group of warriors to help protect his people. Yes, this is John Sayles giving us Seven Samurai, or The Magnificent Seven, in space in a Roger Corman production. We will be doing our best to spoil this film as we go along, so if you don't want anything ruined, turn off the podcast and come back after you've seen the film. We will still be here. So, Father Malone, tell me, when was the first time you saw Battle Beyond the Stars, and what did you think?
I saw this movie in the theater. I was lucky enough to have a dad who took me to every science fiction-y thing that was available. And there wasn't much. should be noted. At this time, everything after Star Wars, people think there wasn't even after Star Wars that many science fiction things. People think there was this tumble down of this explosion of sci-fi, and there was to a certain degree. There was more than there had been, but it didn't really ramp up until the 90s, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the constant output of science fiction. But anyway, this was a movie that I was taken to see in the theater. Another film I'd like to point out that I also got to see in the theater was they put out the pilot of the television series Buck Rogers in the 25th Century in theaters. And my dad took me to that as well. That was my first experience with it. And I'd also like to mention one other thing. I think I was 7 when this movie came out. Not to get spoilery right here at the beginning, but at the end, when Sybil Danning is finally destroyed by her enemies, I recall my father saying, they're just going to float around in space forever. And at age 7, I knew exactly what he meant. I loved the movie then. I love the movie now. The movie I found to be as exciting as Star Wars, but also off-putting and deeply disturbing. And somehow that was more attractive to me than Star Wars. If they had continued making these as a series of films, I might be more in that camp than the Star Wars camp as far as science fiction. Because right now, at this time, it was Star Wars or Star Trek. You kind of fell in one or the other. This would have been the third one, and this is the one I would have gone for.
It was almost like a hybrid between the two, really.
Absolutely. It's got some noble and science fiction-y kind of shit, but it also has some daring do and a lot of opera.
And Chris, how about yourself? What did you think of this film, and when did you first see it?
72 hours ago, folks. This is not a movie that I was eminently familiar with. This was one that I was invited to be part of. I'm assuming Father Malone was invited due to the part of it all, the Banachek connection here. Because I was trying to figure out, why was I invited to this episode? Because I have no previous engagement with this movie.
Because we're a midnight viewing unit.
We were talking about this movie, Father Malone and I, at some point, and you said, I don't know that movie. And we said, you need to see this movie. That's pretty much it. And I think after that, it was like, we're going to do this. And then it eventually got put on my schedule for this year. It might have been quasi-midnight viewing at some point. It just made sense to fit it in here for this show. I'm so curious, what'd you think, Chris?
This movie is at times as interesting as Star Wars, but at other times it is deeply confounding. Off-putting is a nice way of putting it. I would say some points might even downright kind of cynical and disturbing in a way. Not to jump all the way to the end, but if you want to compare and contrast the way Star Wars ends versus the way this movie ends, talk about you ever heard the term zero fucking fanfare? That's how this movie. And that in and of itself, I think, is a microcosm of this movie. This movie is very different in the way it's doing things. It feels a little bit more realistic. Obviously, yes, it is. Star Wars is sure based on Seven Samurai.
No, Hidden Fortress.
Sure. But I mean, again, I was going to say, the putting together in the team thing, how many movies, how many tropes have done that now? And then we just say, that's a Seven Samurai thing. Sure, it is. This is way more specifically drawn from and directly influenced by Seven Samurai, which is a movie I really enjoy. And I think most people who have seen it, which I think are a lot of people who enjoy cinema, would agree. It's a great movie. This movie, I think, puts its name out there as being an interesting sci-fi version of Seven Samurai. I think it does enough. I think there are interesting enough performances. I think there are interesting enough characters. There are people doing some things you wouldn't expect. This is the first thing I've seen Richard Thomas in where I actually like him. In it, I find him to be at times the worst part of that and the most obnoxious, and then at times he's both. So he's really good in this. I think he kind of plays that Luke character well enough. It's interesting. I think it's an interesting movie. There's clearly going to be a lot for us to talk about in terms of the movie itself, but it's definitely not what I was expecting, but it is exactly what I was expecting at the same time, if that makes sense. It surprised me in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I think to the things that I'm probably referencing directly, and I think Father Malone kind of already got to it a little bit. This movie has some issues that are very specific choices that the movie makes that I'm not sure I vibe with. What about you, Mike White?
So I grew up with this movie, saw it on cable. I don't know how many times. I would have loved to have seen this at the theater. This was my first exposure to the Seven Samurai story. I saw this way before I saw anything else. I imagine that a lot of listeners probably grew up with stuff like A Bug's Life, which really puts that out there. There's a bunch of unofficial remakes of Seven Samurai. I definitely saw Magnificent Seven when I was growing up. I had to play the theme for the Magnificent Seven. I don't know how many times in marching band when our budgets got slashed and we just kept playing the same fucking song over and over again. So I definitely saw the movie to try to tie into what it is. Great score. Okay movie, too. And I like this whole idea of Robert Vaughn being in both films. That's kind of nice. And I like his character in both. And some people are like, oh, he's the same character. I'm like, no, not really. If you think that, you really you really need to go back and watch that movie again. You won't regret it. It's pretty good, but it's no Seven Samurai. I think that they do a very smart thing. Like I rewatched Magnificent Seven last night. I think they do a really super smart thing by making the farmer himself part of the actual originator of the quest to find the warriors. Because really, once the three farmers come to town and get Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen on board, they just kind of fuck off to the background and you don't really follow them. You follow Brynner and McQueen throughout the entire movie. They're really the heroes of the story. I think keeping it with Shad here and having him be the one that goes on this quest makes him a much more dynamic character. He really, starts off as very innocent. He doesn't want to kill anybody. The reactions that he's having or interactions he's having with Mother, and I love that the ship is called Mother, and I love those big boobs that the ship has. I just think that it's great. I love this whole idea, and kind of like her as the mother figure, and then, Zed as the father figure, this blind father figure. So many great character actors in this as well. I mean, just Thomas is good. I definitely grew up watching a lot of Waltons, a lot more than I would have liked. But, to have like Sam Jaffe in here and Earl Bone, who I just fucking love that guy. But, having Zed himself be Jeff Corey, it's great. So many good faces and just such a fun film.
It's a night gallery extravaganza here. We got John Saxon. We've got Sam Jaffe. We've got, I don't think Earl Bowen came in, but what was the other one?
I thought Earl Bowen was on an episode of...
No, but Jeff Corey was not only in a couple of episodes, he directed half.
I remember that. We got no John Saxon in Night Gallery either. That's odd.
No, we do.
Okay, we did. Oh, did we?
We had him in that episode where it was a Welsh episode where a woman has a voodoo doll of her husband that she immediately starts to try and kill. Like she throws it into the fire to try and burn him. And then she ends up throwing the doll into the swamp and it turns the room into the giant swampy thing.
Oh my.
And because she's trying to get away to her lover, who's played by John Saxon, who's named Ianto, which is how I knew we were in Wales.
Who wouldn't want to get away to John Saxon? Oof.
As Ianto.
And he looks great in this movie. And
oh my God, what
fantastic
a vision of manliness that is John Saxon.
The disturbing part of this movie is Sador himself, his entire race, these mutants, where he is constantly being taken apart and put back together. Like he's a man made of different body parts. They make it a fucking plot point near the end. Like
the assassination attempt.
Exactly. Just like that alone is disturbing. Not to mention some of the other visions we're given here. Just like on the Dr. Hephaestus's station, Dr. Hephaestus is himself with just like a fucking head. But even the androids that they have, like a half of an android that she puts a cartridge in and he starts singing the song just by opening his mouth. And the music there sounds like music from another galaxy, right? It's so rare to get that in a movie where they give you a bit of music and it doesn't just sound like something from Earth. That to me sounded like, what the fuck is that? And that whole scenario is disturbing. I don't know. Scene after scene after scene as a child was just like, what is this?
You know what it reminds me of at time? Captain EO.
Because of the junkyard aesthetic.
Junkyard aesthetic. But also, and you mentioned the noises, Father Malone. Did you guys notice that when some of the doors opened, it sounded like Darth Vader breathing?
100%. Yes.
You go on alone. father's wish.
I was like, oh my God, what the? It's not just close. It's like if there's 4 beats to the Darth Vader, it's just 2 beats. Like it's just the 2, not the 4. And so it's like, it sounds like it, but you could pass it off as a door opening.
I just love the richness of these worlds. And like you said, every single time you meet a new alien, it's a different race. And it feels like every single race is really like thought out. Like I can imagine what life is like on that space station with Dr. Hephaestus and with all those androids. I mean, for me, of course, I was reminded of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park when it comes to the androids and stuff. And especially, I think there's some barbershop quartet androids that you get instead of the Wendy Carlos Williams type music that comes out of the one guy's mouth. But every single thing is so well thought out. And I think that so goes to John Sayles and just the care that he brought to this, which is so wild to say, like so much care was put into this Roger Corman production. One of his most expensive, I think at the time, $2 million he paid for that, which is wild when you think like you got Jim Cameron working on this, John Sayles, like all of these big name actors like
James Horner.
I mean, Papard is, very hot at this point. And Robert Vaughn's pulling down some bucks as well. It's like, this is pretty amazing. I mean, even to have John Boy from the Waltons inside of here was pretty big deal. He's a known quantity. Everybody has seen him on their TV for the last few years. It's really remarkable. And like I said, the care that Sayles just puts into every single moment of this and the thought behind it. Like, I love his whole thing of on the audio commentary where he's like, I wanted to know how long these characters lived. Like, that was my thing. And then the whole thing at the end, sorry, again, to jump to right at the end, when Sador's like, I wanted to live forever. And it's like, that's your thing, like replacing those body parts. And I love that idea of him just being this self-made Frankenstein of like, oh, I want his arm and I want her leg kind of thing. I'll drink to your leg.
Okay, so we drink our legs.
You mentioned James Cameron, by the way. According to Gail Ann Hurd, Bill Paxton was working on the set of this movie as a carpenter, too, which must have been talk about cuckoo bananas. Just like the confluence of people all at once that would, like, at times are at a height of their career and have not been, essentially are relatively unknowns. Because, I mean, Cameron was kind of, Bill Paxton clearly, like, but just to think.
Well, James Cameron was like nobody here. And he was like, when he got hired, he was just as a model maker. And evidently the story is Corman comes to the studio and goes, let me see the models. And they're like, we don't have anything yet. And he's like, well, what the fuck? What am I, and storms out. And then Cameron draws up the ship. Nell is her name. And presents that to him. And knowing what Corman likes and knowing that it's going to be tits and ass gives us this bizarre ship. And then Corman's like, that's great. And then promotes him to like fucking art director of the movie.
It doesn't get lost in the shuffle with James Cameron, but to hear someone talk about James Cameron doing like sketches for stuff, like it seems in a lot of ways like James Cameron's maybe wasting his talents now. Like, he's not executing to the fullest of his abilities now the way he used to be. If he ever was, like, I would love to have seen that version of James Cameron where he's a little less of a director and more of a force within the productions as kind of the, production designer or, art designer. I mean, again, like James Cameron, if not for the fact he wanted to be a director, could have just been Stan Winston, really. Like, and to be fair, a lot of what Stan Winston did with James Cameron came directly from him and James Cameron working directly together. So it's not like James Cameron wasn't helping him come up with stuff anyways. But to hear them talk about James Cameron drawing stuff and working on the models, it's just like, man, what a like a multi-talented guy. It's not like we didn't already know that, given that he goes to the bottom of the ocean all the time. But it just further hammers home, like James Cameron is just a talented guy, like immensely talented.
James Cameron should be the man running a studio.
Yeah.
He could look at every project from top to bottom, what's going on with it, and figure out the problem and then fix it. Is it a problem with story? Let's fix that problem. Or you're having a problem with the engineering? Let me get in there. I will figure that problem out. You need a water tank? I'll build you the water tank.
you look at the Terminator, the first film, and you see Earl Bowen, Dick Miller, it's like, it's such a Corman influenced film. And you've got Gail Ann Hurd there, who was working on this film as well. And she goes off and produces The Great Smoky Roadblock, I think it is, and then goes on to The Terminator. And Cameron goes from this, I think he does some second unit stuff on another one. He does Piranha 2, The Spawning after this, and then he goes to Terminator. And it's just like, they knew how to solve fucking problems and get the most out of their money. And you look at the Terminator film and you're just like, this is close to a perfect movie. This is one of those movies where you're just like, every single scene needs to be here. I watched an expanded version of the film recently. I saw all these deleted scenes and I'm just like, they made the right decision. They cut out all of this stuff that did not need to be there. The movie that exists just hums along.
Cameron even worked on Escape from New York as a matte artist in between this and Piranha. Like, my joke about the murderous Muslims of True Lies aside, which I think is kind of a weird misstep for him because he doesn't make a lot of missteps really, frankly at all. Like, James Cameron has some movies that in a lot of ways transcend the original movie that he even directed, or transcends the original movie that someone else came up with a concept for. And I don't know, just to your point, and I think maybe James Cameron is too good to even manage a studio. I think he does. I think he's probably better off going to the bottom of the ocean and doing even more insane things than just sitting behind a desk,
But we're not better off. He should stop that. He's done it all.
It's true.
Making Avatar movies. We're not that interested.
Please,
yes, we're all going to see it. You're going to get your money back. But dude, you are wasting our time.
Not everybody's going to see it. I didn't see the second movie. I have no desire after that first movie.
Nope.
I don't want to go back to that world. It's not that interesting.
It's a bummer. That's the bummer for me with James Cameron now, is like, I don't care about Avatar, like one single solitary fuck. And the people that do, cool. Like, there's a whole land in Disney World. Like, part of Animal Kingdom now has Avatar land, and it's packed to the gills constantly. I guess people really wanted it, but it makes me sad because I wish James Cameron was doing things that were a little bit more interesting as opposed to Avatar. Even this, this is better than Avatar. This is more interesting than Avatar. This movie, for all of its problems, it's a much more interesting
Battle Beyond
and
the
successful
Stars?
movie. Yes.
1,000%.
I know, but some people would watch that movie and think I'm crazy for saying that, but it's a much more interesting idea at just its core that then is expounded upon than Avatar is. Avatar is not even an interesting idea at the heart of it. It's boring.
This makes me wish that they had done more science fiction adaptations of Akira Kurosawa movies. To give it Star Wars and then this, both based on his stuff, come on.
Just the way that these characters are treated. Again, everybody has some agency here. When he meets the Darlene Flugel character, Nenelia, I believe it is, she's not content to just ride along as a passenger. She goes out and looks for these warriors as well. And I'm like, that's fantastic. We don't have to have now the cutesy banter between the couple that's eventually going to fall in love. They will fall in love. There will be that coupling towards the end of it, but she's got her agency and she's out there. And I love, when she meets Cayman, and I love that his name is Cayman, just like a fucking crocodile. And then I never really realized that was played by, Morgan Woodward, who is, to me, one of the most sinister motherfuckers in the entire world. He's the one that played the man with no eyes, I believe was his character's name in Cool Hand Luke. The head guy who's just there ready to pick people off with his rifle. I'm like, fucking A. And that it's actually him doing that voice, that it's him in the makeup, because I was like, maybe it's him doing one of those, but it's definitely somebody else in that makeup. They're not going to make that poor old man do that. But no, it's really him under there. And I have to say, too, for 1980, great makeup effects. If he was on Face Off, they would come up and be like, okay, open your mouth, and he wouldn't be able to articulate very much. But the eyes being human eyes and getting that emotion in there, the mouth movement that he can do, I think looks really good. And I kind of love that he's this guy who's like, my whole race was wiped out except for me, and I'm here to kill this Sador motherfucker, and I'm going to get revenge. I'm like, yes, what a pure motivation that is.
That was my favorite character growing up, but Cayman. And because like you were saying, Mike, like just the economy of it. Everyone not only has agency, but their scenes are so fucking economical. We meet him. We find out that he's like a traitor almost. He's going to take her and because he can get body parts from her. He saved her from this thing. Now we know what that thing was. And now we also know that he has this vendetta against Sador. Oh, by the way, here's his man. And he's got these two. By the way, the two here, they communicate through heat.
Oh, Kelvin? Fucking amazing.
All of that is communicated. You get all of it, and we're just moving, and we're on to the next fucking thing. It really impressive.
And how weird is it that his the human guy that's there, his name is so close to Queequeg that it's like such a nice reference to Moby Dick. And this is 2 years, I think, before Wrath of Khan, which is going to rely on Moby Dick like nobody's business. And I do have to bring up the score because as a huge Wrath of Khan fan, this is such the text for things. This is like, because they reuse so many of these special effects in other Corman films. Corman was just like cannibalizing from himself on this one. But the score is such a rough draft of the Star Trek II score. Because I've heard that score like, I don't know how many hundreds of times. But to hear the early version of it in here, and you're hearing some of the exact same, phrasings and stuff. And I know I've given James Horner a lot of shit before, and I'm going to continue to give him shit because he basically is ripping off himself quite a bit as well. Because I heard some Krull in here too, but really Star Trek in this.
So much Star Trek Wrath of Khan. Now the guitar twangs. I can see the Enterprise rising up in the nebula to take care of the Reliant during any rising moment in this movie. And so many horns.
Oh God, yes.
Oh my. And in a bit of his own, he rips off his aliens stuff here with the sort of militaristic drum. Dun, 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 dun.
That's what caught my ear was the ripping off of it. It was like, oh my, like really.
And there's another connection with this movie between Horner and Cameron working together. They did Aliens, and then eventually Horner, I think, wins an Academy Award for Titanic score.
Wherever you are.
There's James Cameron, apparently. Looming large in the back.
For years and years and years, I thought the voice of Nell here was Pat Prescott, who was the voice of Night Flight on the USA Network. And it's not. I was shocked reading about it this day. Lynn Carlin is her name. And what a great voice, by the way. What a great character, by the way. Talk about compare like this computer voice to any other computer voice in any other fucking things. It's always a bit of dead-eyed whateverness here. Whereas Nell is a living, breathing character. And then, by the way, there's something really unusual about being inside her the entire time, particularly given the shape of the ship. There's so much just I said off-putting. It's not necessarily off-putting, but there's so much adult going on in this movie. And when you compare, by the way, all of that to the fact that they do this movie in 90 fucking minutes, speaking of economy, and then fucking Zack Snyder remakes Seven Samurai with his fucking Rebel Moon movies, which is 4 fucking hours. And every time they introduce a character in that movie, I'm just like, here's somebody else I don't give a shit about.
No, absolutely. I forgot all about that thing because I didn't watch it. I didn't want to watch it. I saw that Army of the Dead, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do anymore. I'm not going to torture myself with more of this guy's horse shit. That Lynn Carlin, by the way, she was in a ton of stuff, but I mostly know her. She's the mother in Dead of Night, the Bob Clark film about the veteran who comes home from the war and he's a zombie.
Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to call everybody up and we're going to have a big celebration.
Oh, that's a great idea, hon.
Fucking amazing movie. If people haven't seen that, I covered that with Mark Begley over on Wake Up Heavy years ago and was very much a better man for watching that movie.
Father Malone, you were talking about the ship and like the inside of the ship, that junkyard aesthetic, that lived-in feel. It works here. It works in Star Wars, and why is it not done as much? Is it because nobody wants to rip off Star Wars? I mean, like Star Wars doesn't even do it. Like, and obviously it makes sense.
Oh yeah, Dark Star. That really before that. I mean,
Dark Star is the best example in my mind, because Dark Star is kind of not where it all comes from, but it's almost like the distillate version. Like, it's the cheapest, best, quickest way done by the people who know how to do it the right way, is what Dark Star feels like.
That's Dan O'Bannon, and then of course the actual sort of Rosetta Stone of the lived-in sci-fi is Alien.
Somebody once explained it to me as far as like a clean universe versus a dirty universe, and they were using 2001: A Space Odyssey versus something like a Silent Running, where you're just like, I can smell the sweat if I was to watch Silent Running, and basically probably smell the joints too that Bruce Stern's smoking up on the space station, versus that overly clean. And the overly clean thing works for something like a Logan's Run for me, where it's like, this is this false aesthetic and people are living in this, dream world of this, perfect society. And it's really when they go outside of the dome that they're like, oh, no, this is the real thing. I can actually get my hands dirty. I prefer a dirty universe. I prefer the lived-in look myself.
And then you have something like, say, like to go back to something like Star Wars with the prequels, you have Coruscant, where we have both. But you have both. You have like the upscale and then the downscale, it coexisting within one another. And I like that even more, because that takes that initial idea of Tatooine and builds out upon it, because we get to see, again, and a lot of this comes down to why were they doing this? Because they didn't have the economy to make it any other way. Like, you can't show a lot of it. So you just have to hint at the things that were going on. Cue the late 90s, where we have enough money to show all sorts of wild bullshit instead. So we all forgot what restraint was, which is fine. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you have the ability to show Jack Black running around in a Minecraft world fighting creepers, I am not going to tell you not to do it. But there is nothing that can be replicated like actually shooting something on a set. And watching a movie like this is case proof positive as to why, even if a movie like this stumbles and fumbles at times, it's still an interesting movie, because they were making all this stuff there. In reality, they were working with matte paintings and miniatures and maquettes. And also, I mean, again, like, this is movie making the way movie making, it's not that it's not done this way anymore, but it's kind of a lost art, because there are different ways of doing things now that don't translate here. And people that are still doing this now were inspired by things like this that they watched when they were y'all's age or my age growing up, seeing this and going, I want to do that. I want to be able to reach out and touch the face of that creature, not it just be a guy in a blue.
It's scrappy, which is what I like about this. And it feels like, to hear Gale Anne Hurd talk about how they were rummaging through Jack-in-the-Box dumpsters to get the containers, the hamburger containers, the old styrofoam containers, and they would use those on ceilings or on walls of the ships to have stuff to bounce off of and to have the light really catch different angles and things, to use milk crates like that they would deliver milk in for the floors on different ships and things, so you could get the light coming up through that, plus you throw some smoke in there to give an extra little effect. I mean, it makes so much sense. And when you look at each one of these ships, each one has a personality, and that personality goes with the person that it is. Like, looking at Cowboy Ship, and it's just like this kind of like beautiful archway that they go through, where it's like padded on the sides and on the top and stuff. And he's got these pipes running through there. And you're like, I don't know what these pipes do. I don't really have to know what these pipes do. They just add an aesthetic that really works. And at that point in the story, Shad has become crafty enough that he can talk the cowboy into
Umatil. That was my customer. How would you like 10,000 Mac Laser 4s and 40,000 charge slides? They're paid for, and I haven't got the fuel to get them home.
You're carrying weapons?
They're hand weapons. The best we make.
We're going to need weapons. But we won't know how to use them.
Yeah.
And we'll probably need someone to teach us how to use them.
Yes, I can see that.
And we did save your life.
That's great, man. I love that he's already starting to get in there. Like, he's going to do whatever he can to save his people, even if it comes to like slight chicanery, not always, but there are some things. I mean, everybody's got their own motivation. Papard's character is great because he really has no motivation other than like, sure, what the hell, I'll do it. And then you get those little great touches like the fucking belt that he's got with the soda and scotch and ice cubes. Man, who thought of that? That is awesome.
I loved him more than I could love Han Solo as a character now because there's some actual like ambiguity left to the character. And because you've essentially split the Han Solo character into two characters in this movie with Robert Vaughn and George Papard. Like that's those two sides of the same coin that Han Solo like had to have as the character. But here you have them separated. And I love George Papard. I think he's the best part of this movie. Him and Robert Vaughn. Like those are the standouts of the movie, other than John Saxon. But I mean, John Saxon, he's given the most fun role in the damn movie. Like they're like, here, you're going to play a guy who's literally like put together from parts like a Frankenstein's monster. Okay. And sign me up for that.
It should be pointed out that George Papard is from Earth, which is something that you don't get in a whole lot of science fiction movies that take place out in the outer galaxies with all of these weird things. And, not only were they sort of showing a whole lot of ingenuity as far as how they were designing and creating all of the sets for all of these disparate spaceships, but just the design alone is pretty impressive. Like, Nestor's ship is just a void.
I love Nestor's ship.
Me too. And it's a cost-cutting thing, but at the same time, it makes sense because this movie is not only trafficking these great sort of visuals, but as you said, Mike, John Sayles' script is not only like giving us good characters and dialogue and keeping the plot going and everything, but he's really invested in giving us these interesting science fiction concepts for everybody. We're getting Nestor, who is effectively the Borg, 10, 15 years before the Borg would show up anywhere?
George Papard, Space Cowboy, is essentially Lone Star from Spaceballs. Like the console that he sits at looks like the console that Lone Star sits at in that goddamn Winnebago. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, Mel Brooks copped from this movie? Really?
And even with things like Cayman, I was like, well, Bosk, but at the same time, really reminds me of the bad guy from Galaxy Quest. To go back to Nestor, I mean, Nestor's so fucking ingenious. I love this whole idea of like such a collective and just each person is almost a cell. And I especially like there's the humor here is, well, it's a little corny at times, but most of the time these jokes really land. So this whole thing of like, well, we always keep a spare. They have 4 Nestor, but there's a 5th Nestor just in case they need one. And I'm glad that they brought him along because they actually need him before the movie's over.
They absolutely do. And again, just part of the fucking ingenuity of the goddamn screenplay here, where that could have worked. Nestor could have ended this entire goddamn conflict on its own. And to know that no matter what they do to Nestor, that there are hundreds of thousands of them and they all share the same consciousness, that is the same person. That's fascinating to me. Again, as a 7-year-old, kind of freaked me out.
When they take the bite of the hot dog and they're all chewing.
Hot dog.
Yes, that was like my favorite part when I was a kid. I was like, oh, that's so cool. They all taste the hot dog at the same time. Though that part always confuses me because George Papard is playing the harmonica at that part and he's cooking the hot dog and I never see the hot dog. I just see him playing the harmonica and then they come up and Nestor says, what are you eating? And I was like, oh, he thinks he's eating the harmonica. And it's like, oh, no, it's actually the hot dog. So my bad on that one. That's my only unclarity in this film. And every single time I watch it, it always gets me.
So we could have had this is not that. And then he hands them the harmonica and then they eat the harmonica.
And they're all just chewing the harmonica. And you hear like little noises.
As they breathe.
God damn, the sound design in this movie is great. Chris, you mentioned the doors and stuff, but I love the laser blasts and all of these little noises that they put in throughout. I was listening to the audio commentaries in the car, and I heard a couple times where they do that thing with like what do they call that? Not the yada, the waddle? No, the wubba or whatever they call it. Like the sounds that people just kind of make, like and they lay in behind things. And there's one part during an attack where I'm like, oh, I heard that woman just scream like 10 seconds ago. So they're just like looping this kind of stuff. it's such a minor quibble because for the most part, like all of these sounds are great and it plays very well. I mean, again, Horner, for as much as, he's ripping himself off on this, the score goes perfectly with this movie. And I love just how, like, those battle scenes, especially towards the end, I mean, there's motifs for all of these different ships. And I love that it's ships instead of people. Like, you can identify every single person that is inside of the ship from the ship itself because they're all so distinct. I really think that's a great idea. And then adding to it the motifs, the musical motifs that go with these. And I remember in the audio commentary that Sayles and Corman did, Sayles was saying that he was getting notes like, can we have 3 ships being shown together at all times? And he's like, I don't know why that was, like, just to make it look more visually interesting or something. And then after that, every single time I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, 3 ships. Oh, there's 3 ships together. But it works really well. I'm like, okay, these shots look amazing. And you can really tell, sorry, I'm rambling now, but you can really tell who's doing what in relation to what during the space battle, which gets lost in so many other movies where you're like, I don't know who's shooting at who. Like, people get really impressed by the big end scene in Return of the Jedi with all those ships flying around. And then I want to say they redid that in, like, I don't know, Attack of the Clones or one of those movies. No, that's okay, but I can't tell where anybody is at, and I can't really follow what's going on here. I could follow this battle very easily.
A Star Wars solution in those scenarios is to pare it down. So what you're talking about, like the Return of the Jedi thing, as opposed to the final Attack of the Clones thing, what they did is they gave us 2 ships fighting everybody else, and that worked. But here, we're dealing with 7 different spacecraft versus a flagship, the Hammerhead, which looks a lot like a Star Destroyer and a blockade runner had a baby, and those the bug-eyed ships. And the sound effect, the background effect you're talking about is called a walla.
Walla, thank you.
Roger Corman would not only reuse James Horner's soundtrack score here for a couple of other movies, but like every fucking trailer that came down the pike. But the sound effect of the lasers, that twang, 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 like that showed up in every science fiction movie of the 1980s that came out of New World. And those ships, those bug-eyed looking spaceships, just kept showing up over and over and over again.
I think that we owe a lot of the continuity and things when it comes to that battle to Mr. Murakami himself, because he comes from a world of animation, and it just makes a lot of sense that he can tell. From what I understand, he actually directed that How Many Licks to the Center of a Tootsie Roll Pop commercial, which is pretty fucking amazing. And then Where the Wind Blows comes out in 1986. I mean, I'm sure his heavy metal sequence is great and the snowman is really good and everything, but Where the Wind Blows? Come on. I mean, that's really amazing. And then I think having him behind the camera and having fucking Corman himself shooting second unit, pretty boss, but just Murakami knows how to flow. And then you're also working with a really good effects team.
Wait, did Murakami do the Neverwhere sequence for heavy metal that got cut?
The soft landing sequence.
Oh, okay, at the very beginning. Oh, I had no idea. That's fantastic. Evidently, I'm a big fan of Murakami's work, and including Where the Wind Blows, and as fucking horrifying as that is. That's not something I ever want to watch again, but I'm glad I did.
Oh, it's like a Watership Down, where it's like, nope, don't need to see this ever again. Plague Dogs, no thank you. No thank you.
Quapeg, by the way. Not Queequeg, but Quapeg.
No, I think I said he sounds
close
like
enough.
Queequeg.
Sounds like
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Let me throw in some Ahab here amidst all the fucking 7s.
2 syllables.
First syllable sounds like
Queequeg.
How nice was it seeing Julie Duffy show up in this in a very small role, as apparently she is Shad's sister. There's a line at one point, she says, my brother, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, never noticed that until I actually started digging into this a little bit more, because, I never watched this movie with a critical eye until this week. And then it's like, oh, shit, this actually really holds up. This is, like I said, very well written and really well directed. And to me, there's not very many sour notes in this film at all.
The only problem with this movie ends up being budgetary. And if they had had even $5 or $6 million more, I could imagine this being a classic that people have on their shelves as opposed to something we're probably hipping in their direction.
But I think the low budget aesthetic works really well, and they make it work really well. I mean, things like when they go to find Robert Vaughn, and just the spooky music that they have going in the back, the, again, use of smoke to make it look really wild in there. I was so freaked out when he's John Boy or Shad is flipping through the different prostitute ads, and then one prostitute is still alive, I guess. And I'm just like, what the hell? And then to meet Gelt, and I love gold in Yiddish is Gelt. I love having Gelt there with the that amazing, like all the treasure chests and all that stuff, and he's just sitting in that fucking throne, and you're like, oh man, this guy's seen some shit. And it's kind of like the Waco Kid from Blazing Saddles, right, where it's like,
Oh, well, it got so that every pissant prairie punk who thought he could shoot a gun would ride into town to try out the Waco Kid. I must have killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille. Got pretty gritty. I started to hear the word draw in my sleep.
And Vaughn is just like,
I settle disputes very quickly. I'm very good at it. And I don't care who I work with. I've collected a lot of enemies along the way. I have no home, no family, no principles. It's strictly business with me.
People are out to kill me. Like, I'm the only survivor on this planet, maybe with the exception of that weird prostitute over there. But otherwise, it's just me. Don't even have a dog. And I'm just hanging out here, and people are going to be gunning for me. And that whole idea of like him, and it's very like this part is similar to his character from Magnificent Seven, where he's like, I'm on the run. This guy Gelt is not on the run, but his existence is nothing. He's stuck on this dead planet because he can't leave because people are going to try to kill him. And it's so similar in that way to the character that he's playing in Magnificent Seven, where it's, how much are we getting paid for this job? $20. Give that right to the guy who owns this barn because he's charging me $10 a night to stay in this barn because I'm a fucking wanted man. And I'm like, that's pretty good.
I love here that he is a man who has everything but can't do anything with it. And his only interactions with anyone for years and years and years is them trying to get him and kill him or hand him over for some sort of reward. And so when this character shows up and says, well, I can't give you anything other than a meal and basically family, that's his motivation, that spurs him on is fucking awesome. And the fact that he gets it at the end, get a feast together, we're burying it with him. I promise that man a meal.
It's a touching moment. I like it.
I just wanted to go on the record and say that I tried very hard to get a lot of interviews for this episode. I thought for sure I'd be able to get a hold of some of the folks that haven't passed away from this, such as maybe Richard Thomas, though I think he's busy on Broadway, if memory serves. Unfortunately, a lot of other folks have passed away. One person that hasn't is Sybil Danning. I did reach out to her agent, and of course her agent said, no, sorry, she's working on her memoir. I mean, it's just the typical celeb, or at least agent/manager excuse. No, they're working on their memoir. They don't want to talk to anybody. And I'm like, hey, wouldn't that like shake some memories loose or something, being asked about stuff? But anyway, I was very fortunate to talk to the editor of Battle Beyond the Stars, Allan Holzman. He has a book that came out back in 2021 called Celluloid Wars, The Making of Battle Beyond the Stars. It's from the Cine Exploits label. I'll be sure to link to that in the show notes. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and take a break and play back that interview with Mr. Holzman right after these brief messages.
Get ready to dive deep into the life, career, and unforgettable moments of the one and only Chevy Chase. Join us on an exciting journey through the illustrious career of this comedy icon as we explore his groundbreaking roles, behind-the-scenes stories, and timeless contributions to the world of entertainment. Each episode of the Chasing Chevy Chase podcast brings you expert analysis and nostalgic reflections on Chevy Chase's most iconic characters in classic films like National Lampoon's Vacation, Caddyshack, and Fletch. Whether you're a die-hard Chevy Chase aficionado or simply curious about the man behind the laughter, Chasing Chevy Chase is your go-to podcast for all things Chevy Chase. Tune in and join the conversation as we celebrate the life and legacy of a true Hollywood legend. Don't miss out. Subscribe now to Chasing Chevy Chase wherever you get your podcasts, and let the adventure begin.
Obviously, I want to ask you about your book, and I want to ask you about Battle Beyond the Stars, but I'd love to know a little bit more about you. I mean, you've got a fascinating history. I'm so curious, how did you get involved with movie making?
Well, I just finished yesterday my autobiographical documentary that I would love for you to see, and work for you if you could. I was a pretty severe stutterer. I was a math major, math and physics, but mostly math, and definitely on the conceptual side, nothing practical, no relation to engineering whatsoever. I was in my junior year, and we were told that it didn't apply, what we were studying didn't apply to life, which meant that I had it at this time. Actually, MIT applied it about 15 years ago. So it meant that I had to teach. And as a stutterer, I couldn't teach. And I was afraid to do acid because I had a lot of stuff repressed from my childhood. So whenever I saw a man with thick, hairy hands, I would get a chill. And I remember something from my past, but I didn't know what happened. And no one told me. And I was told a completely different story. The day my baby brother was born, I didn't know what to say. I was so happy, so my vocal cords became paralyzed. And then when I started talking again, I stuttered. That was the story. But in reality, my uncle molested me. He was a baby. It took me until my early 30s before I put that together. But as a 19, 20-year-old, I was really confused and lost. And instead of doing acid, I knew from science that if you stayed up for 4 days and nights, your brain would secrete this fluid that was similar to an acid trip. So that's what I did. And I went for a walk with my philosophy teacher in the snow. I was in Cleveland at Western Missouri University. And I told him my dilemma, and he said, "What do you want to do in life?" And I swear this is how it came out. He said, "I communicate." And he said, "How can you do that?" I said, "Well, I can act." And stutterers don't stutter when they act. And I had acted I was actually acting in political theater, the school from Antioch, because I was a big anti-war demonstrator. And Cleveland was the home of SDS, and that's where Dr. Spock was a faculty advisor. That was on the first march against the war in Washington, April 15th, 1965. I was at the first teach-in, too, which came from professors from the University of Michigan and Wisconsin who arrived on campus Friday afternoon and left Monday morning and taught day and night about Southeast Asian culture. So I decided, he said, my philosophy, she said, "Well, go act." So I packed up my bags and went to New York City, and I went into I got accepted to this acting class at Circle in the Square Theater. And that was like a top Broadway theater right on Bleecker Street. And Dustin Hoffman had just been cast in The Graduate after starring in a play called A.E.H. ? That led me to a scholarship at Williamstown Summer Theater in northern Massachusetts in the Berkshires. And I had a featured role in 6 characters in Search of an Author. It was I think one of the greatest plays ever written. And there was an ad in the green rooms from Bennington College saying full scholarship and work stipend for 3 years for male actors. This was still an all-girls school. So I auditioned and got it. And my job was the school projectionist. And I showed the Janus, now the Criterion Archive. So every weekend I saw a double bill of great European or Asian movie or Indian movie, in international movie. But I even saw on your list that you did To Be or Not to Be, and I love that. It's fun. So that's how I got my movie education. And I had equipment. I didn't have an editing machine, And my teacher in theater had made an independent movie, but he couldn't edit it. His hands were unable to. And I wanted to try editing, so I spent a work term cutting black and the Beatles' White Album came out. And I spent a winter cutting black and white leader with a splicer and rewinds and a projector, no the viewer, but I would project subliminal editing patterns to the White Album. And then I started a film department with my teacher. It wasn't a film department. We had one camera, full X, and we made movies edited in the camera, and which is how they made movies in Hong Kong before they had electronics. So I made a couple movies. I even made a political documentary about the 1969 moratorium against the war, and I made this little movie about a soldier's erotic fantasy at his point of death. And I won the New York Brooklyn Arts Cultural Film Festival Award and the New York Erotic Film Festival. On the film tour, and Bob Shea was the head of that. The head of New Monkey was Bob Shea's first foray. And his company then was called Saliva Films. And when I was on Critters 2 doing second unit, I had an afternoon where we were coming back from the screening, and I reminded him of that, and he remembered that fondly. So anyway, I started this other movie, and John Avnet, I was introduced to him. I started editing as an assistant in New York, and I got a job through a friend, and the sound editor got sick, and so I did his work, and then the editor got sick, and I did his work. And then there was this big commercial for Eastern Airlines, which was a big airline on the East Coast at that time, and Orson Welles did the voiceover. And they wanted to do a 90-second commercial for Nixon's second inauguration, and right after that. So my job was to go, no one wanted to go into the archive and spend all that time, so I did it. I got the editing, and it turned out to be a brilliant thing. They hired an orchestra. It was really huge. And then I was able to get a lot of editing work after that, but I didn't like to talk to clients, so I was the editor. They just gave stuff to me. So I wound up doing a lot of Air Force recruitment films that were shot in 16 millimeter, but they were cut to Motown. So it was really visual stuff. And then I did this documentary about, it was the person I was working for made a film about his sand sculpture and and I edited that, which won awards. And I recut John Avnet's movie feature, and I suggested he go to film school, and he went to AFI. And then he called and he said, I should come. And I showed my work, and, I got accepted there. So that was my film path. And then when I was there, I didn't have enough money to stay there, so I cut for Roger Corman during that time. And I cut Candy Stop Nurses first year and Crazy Mama the second year. And then the first time I asked Roger to direct after Crazy Mama, and I showed him my AFI movie, which is based on a Roald Dahl short story called Skin, and he only fell asleep once during it. And I reached over the sound and woke him up. But it was shot in anamorphic color. It was a good production. Anyway, I walked outside with him and carrying my film can, and I said, and he said, thank you very much, Al. I'll see you later. And he walked away.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So then I went off to cut in Asia. I cut 2 action films for Fred Weintraub. One was Checker Flag or Crash, and the other was Amsterdam Kill, which was actually produced by Andre Morgan. Fred worked out the foreign deal with that. And anyway, I was cutting action movies in Asia. And then I got this other movie called Cloud Dancer. I almost got the Stuntman. I was in the finals for that. This is when Mel Simon came out and was giving movies to any Jewish producer, filmmaker, who did commercials on an airplane. Feature. I did Cloud Dancer, and then after 5 months, I got fired, and it was really unfair because the director started recutting my work, and I was recutting his work. And my assistant father was like on the board of the guild, and they said he should sue. And so I sued and I lost, and I got so pissed off, and I dropped out of film, took a construction job, and wrote a novel about my life, discovered about my uncle, and I started roller skating, and I made a movie on roller skates, and but that wasn't getting anywhere. The construction job stopped, and I really wanted to have a good movie because I was really devoted to the art of editing, and editing was my expression. And I may be doing as a stutter, I could never interview well, so I got movies that no one else wanted, but they usually presented great editing challenges, and so it was good for editing. So I was able to get have lots of control. By that time, I usually never worked with a director. It was really rare because they walked away from the movies or got fired or they only had 2 weeks. And then ultimately it was between me and the producer. And the producer would usually let me have my go at it because I worked all the time until something was right. But I really wanted a good movie. And Coppola was Hammett. And I really wanted to cut that. And I really loved vendors and Roger a letter asking him to recommend me. Notice I didn't call him because I stuttered, right? So he called and said, I feel awkward talking to Francis, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but look, I'm doing my biggest movie ever. That'll be Beyond the Stars, and I want you to edit it. So can you come in the office? So I came in and got the job.
What were some of the biggest challenges of cutting that film?
Everything was a challenge from the get-go. Biggest was the first one, which was I was a roller skater. I skated into the down Venice Beach, and Roger purchased Hammond Lumber, which is a lumber company on Main Street, and he left the sign up, Hammond Lumber, which is even had part of it gone through that was broken glass. When people asked if he would change it, he said, no, I want people to think that this place isn't worth anything. So first day on the job, the special effects supervisor comes up to me, and he's a towering guy, and he goes, I don't want you guys from live action messing with my footage, and I've got Roger's approval to I get the cut. And I said, sorry, but I'm the editor, and I need your footage, and either give it to me now or I'll get it later. But I'm going to the entire clan of rotoscope people and model makers and assistant editors, and they were all listening because no one defied Chuck. And so he was my battle the whole time. And my big undercurrent, and which is the undercurrent in the book, was that all these, John Sayles wrote a brilliant script, but when Roger says write a script, he says don't write the budget. So John wrote, a lot of action in space. Chuck was a brilliant supervisor and brilliant vision. He storyboarded everything really well. His visions were great, and it was like the beginning of computer animation for space movement. It was a machine called the Helicon, and this budget was small. Roger got $3 million from Orion, and he put up $3 million, and but he took Orion's $3 million and bought the studio. So it was being produced on Roger's $3 million, which meant it's not a $3 million in the bank. It's okay, 200 this week, 2,000 next week, 20,000 next week. This is getting bigger. I'll never know. 200,000 is going to the cruise shop. We're out of money. So everything is like ultimately down the line. As soon as the first cut was done, I lost one editing machine. Because when you're putting dailies to film, you need 2 machines, one that has the dailies and one that has your cut. You have to do it on one machine. You can't do them actually without two moviolas, which is stupid. But as soon as the first cut was done, moviola was out. Our head water bottle was out. And I had to write Roger a letter telling him that it took longer for me. It wasn't time, effective and cost effective for me to walk to the main stage because the editing room was in the lumberyard in the second story. So I had to walk to the stage and back to water. That takes so much time. In fact, we had a water machine. I wouldn't have to leave. They put it back. And they did the same thing with the phone. That was later. That was after we were locked, so we were still mixing. But I had to get phone calls at the main stage. And the most heartbreaking cheapness was at the end with James Horner. I can't tell you how much Jamie's face fell and heart just dissolved. And Roger said, let's do this in mono. We'll save money. Jamie got back at this. On Star Trek, he used the same score basically. But he took $20,000 in his budget and went to London and hired the London Symphony Orchestra.
And I just love that score so much. And it makes those action scenes just shine.
Every single cut and every single move. I was his music editor, and he would make me, for every count, go back and forth, one frame forward and one frame back, and then the frame, if that was the exact frame, he didn't want to be off with one frame, and he made me do that every single cut. Everything he added to it, he made everything work to the fullest. And his love themes were great, and his suspense themes were great. Just he was inspired by Prokofiev, and he was very fun about that. But he was such a master. But I had to tell him a year later, when I was directing for Roger, I was doing for the world, which is, he came in, I was having a screening, it was close to the final cut, and I invited him to it, but he was late. And I really wanted my wife to do the score, because I had been producing her band, not musically, but just financially. When I met her, I heard her sing that the first night I met her, and I asked her if she would be my tax deduction, pay my envelope, and give it to her to promote her thing. But she ran it, and so. But I wanted a new wave score. I didn't want there was nothing straight about the movie I was doing. There's lots of stuff straight about Battle Beyond the Stars, and it wants to be a real movie. I was trying to be the next hit guy, but Roger caught on at the very end. And, I was Samurai Sword, but that's in Cellular Wars Part 2, which is coming out shortly. But then another challenge was trying to make what the director was shooting work. I can honestly say nothing worked on its own, because he was an animator and an art director, and he storyboarded the whole movie, and he shot the storyboards, and the characters were great, they were fun, but the camera never moved. The staging was proscenium. It was very traditional Japanese in nature. People came in, said what they said, and they leave, and it's very formal. The entrance is so. And I kept giving notes saying the camera's got to move, and finally the camera got a thing that it's like a dentist chair where you could go like this. So a lot of the cockpit shots were done like that. So he is bringing movement, and it's one in the book where I get really excited. They got movement, yes. But to make everything work, it was the staging that was rather stilted. It was to make it not look, and so many actresses, they their head before they say their line, and it's like, give me a break. Not picking up, but the director was thinking he got everything on the set, all the emotion was there, and why isn't it in the edit? And everyone blames the editor, so there's that, and keeping up the pace is incredible, because you have to have your cut of what they shot today, tomorrow. Because 3 days after the last shot, you show the whole film. And that's the schedule. There's more work to be done. But if you can't do that, you can't be alone. You can't edit for Roger. I had proven myself time and time. I was never anything, the movies I cut were well cut. And, Roger was really happy with me as his editor. And, and so the other big challenges I was trying to mention, it was the Helicon, and it would break down a lot, and there was always waiting. So there was a mystery as to what this thing would actually look like. Well, it's time, because all you're doing is editing the talk, not editing the action. And the script had numbers for every piece of action, and that was scheduled, and it was storyboarded by Chuck. But I wasn't seeing it in the editing I was seeing lots of flyby. I wasn't seeing the action. The flybys were great, and it was interesting work. The start, the construction, the model construction led by the Scotex was great, and Jim Cameron did the main ship, and all he breasts once he got it right. I kept saying we're not getting the shots, and so they were blaming me for not cutting them in, and then I was accused of not knowing enough technically what was going on, and that the second editor was friends with the producer, and the producer's first choice for the editor. He got equal footing, and he started walking around with a clipboard, reading off the shot and screening, and the first screening we had. I went to Roger and I said, "Who's got the final say?" He said, You both do." I said, "Can't that doesn't work. I have to have final say." He said, "Okay, but you have equal power." But that didn't last very long, because the film, we had the screening, and he was reading off all 100 shots and saying what they were, and people came away from the screening like, "Oh, I finally see the movie." You saw numbers on the white slug that were read perfectly, and I no doubt about it. I stuttered then quite a bit. So I tended not to stutter a lot because I chose not to speak. I only spoke when I had to, and that I had lots of ways to be fluent, but I still stuttered, it was still open stutter. So I would never want to read shots. And he read them perfectly, and I was in the elevator with him, and I said, you did a really great job reading those shots. And he said, "Oh, nothing. I learned that in the third grade." And, that's when I stuttered. So it was like, and that's when I was having all that trauma. Alan can't talk. What happened to Alan? And so I didn't lay it on him, but it was like I had that perspective, but I also had that determination. And so it didn't take long before I saw Roger walking dejected in the parking lot. And I said, "What's the matter?" He said, I can't make my release date. I just met with Chuck, and he said, "We're far behind and we need more time, and I don't have the money." Wonder. And I said, "If you give me all the power, I can get it done." Because we have so many flybys and so many character shots in the ships, and they had a great rotoscope department, and lots of people devoted to. We had the garbage match then, which is draw your own laser beam over the shot. You just make it, but it worked because it was fast, and there we were. So I said to Roger, we have enough flybys. I can do 2 kamikaze, 2 battles. I also have kamikaze type runs to the main ship, to the different battle, the different, each basically the storyline is each of the 7 samurai dying in the last one helps, So it's like, so that's how. And so, but I said I needed complete control, and he gave it to me, and I basically stayed up 4 weeks. The last 5 weeks, I think. The last week or 2, I was sleeping in the editing, but I was just doing everything I could. And I wanted, this is one funny moment where I really wanted release to come at you, to get some real action. And graphics person said, "That's not realistic." What do you mean realistic? It's a fucking laser battle. It's okay, I'll do it. And it looks great. It's wonderful. Right. I learned when I was editing Kennedy Striped Nurses, Joe Dante and Alan Arkish were cutting trailers. And in trailers, when you do the sound, you have to do everything. You do the sound for effects, you have to have a separate role for effects, and so you have a lot of space between the sounds. And so you fill that with leader, and you get that sheet from the lab when they make a print of the film that doesn't work, rather than throwing it out, we'll sell it for a penny a foot. And so sometimes they give you great films. You get a roll of great films. And so they kept them. It was called the Dante Arkish Memorial Archive. One of the reels was the bridge scene from Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch. And I studied that shootout and explosions and all that. And I saw that there was like 3 or 4 frames of clear leader. And, it was caused by the heaviness of the explosion, but I have clear leader. So from that point on, starting from Kennedy Striped Nurses, anytime there was a gunshot, I would add 1 or 2 frames of clear, made it a gunshot. And with battle, I could add some laser beams to add little things, and and make, like when Gelt dies, it's pathetic. He came in, here's Robert Blanc. He's got the sleekest shit, coolest introduction scene where, he's got great lines, and he reprises his role from Magnificent Seven. And his death scene comes in with 1 shot, 2 cameras, static. He's in a ship and smoke comes out and he winces like this. And that's all I have. So time for subliminal editing, cut it with flat stones, everything. Then it was a big optical charge, but you can't negatively cut single frames. So you have to put everything on an optical stand. But, it's ultimately, a cheap effect. It's still an expensive effect, but not as expensive if you had to animate or reshoot or bring the actor back. And Roger liked that.
One thing that I praised about the film when I was having a discussion with my co-host was I always know where I'm at when it comes to those space battles, because there's too many times where I will watch a battle scene and I have no idea where I am, where anybody else is in relation to each other. You keep both of those battles, but the entire film, you keep me in the action and I know what is happening and who's getting affected by things.
It's the editor's job to do that. But it's also important to confuse you at the beginning, but as long as you can locate yourself shortly therein. It's actually a technique that Michael Kahn uses all the time in Spielberg's movies. And I used it before knowing about Michael. But in dialogue scenes that you don't really want to open up on the wide shot. It's like, how boring, open up in the middle and reveal, so that at least the next cut, it may be boring, but it reveals something, what's you're perceiving. But thanks. Good. So
I know that John Sayles was getting calls throughout the project and saying, we can't have these ships landing there. You need to change some things. Do you remember?
That's not true.
No?
That's
okay.
Not true. He may have gotten that in the beginning, but through the production, he responded to changes. There were changes just before we shot, and then there weren't any changes while the shooting was going on. We can't afford that. We didn't get pages in inches length, but he had a lot of changes towards the end. But that's it. I don't know how else to say that. Obviously, consistent with the script that I had in the beginning, we're throwing out pages that much. There may have been some changes that I have to say that when I edit it, I really don't like to go off the script because I really want the film to be what speaks to me. And so I don't study the script. I study the film. My approach is more East Coast than West Coast, because I was trained in New York, and the New York editors don't have a lot of time. And so they like to make their decisions while they're watching it for the first time. And maybe if it's really complicated to watch it, make the decision the second time, but that's it. But while you're watching it, you mark what you like and what you think is usable. And then while you're doing that, and you're formulating some kind of an idea of the shape of the thing. But everything you like, you take out and you hang on it in the trim and you organize it. So now you're only doing the things that you like. And so you can even build it on a synchronizer without looking at it. So you have a structure in your mind of what you like. And fitting that in becomes a challenge. And then if you don't like it, you can always go back and rework it. But you have something you like. It's a very positive, exciting way to work rather than the LA work, which is to break everything down to rolls, look at the script, see everything that was covered by that, and then make your decision as you go and you build from the beginning. In the New York ways, you're able to recognize where you're going, and then it's how you get there. Your mise en shot, or like the shot that's key, and then build up to that. You don't use that kind of shot earlier, sort of thing.
Can you tell me about the end of the film? Was the end always what was supposed to be there?
Yeah, but it was great. Roger shot the actual pilot, Shad and Nanilia go up at the very end. But Sador getting blown up was always there. But the actual shooting, I was on the set that night, and Roger had gone out to dinner with Roger and Julie with two couples, and then he was bringing them to the stage to see the big effect shot, because for the Sador ship, every inch of that stage was used. There were no walls. What you're seeing is the entire stage. Everything is built on platforms within. That's the full space. There was also a swing stage that was not soundproof, where you could build something. But anyway, it was filled and it had like about 20 Malmori in full uniform. And Roger George, who's Roger Corman's longtime effects guy, and he's got burns all over his body. Well, he's a pro, but it's low budget, so he's doing everything, and he's marching around, and he's a big guy, and he's all full of sweat. And Jimmy is talking to John Saxon, who is really nervous because things are going to be exploding, and he's going right behind him, and how close this is. Have you ever done this before? What's going to happen? So he was really scared. So Sador is like fear. I want to live forever. It's like real. And I luckily had a front row seat to it all, and it had to be finished by midnight because you had gone to overtime. And suddenly there was a crash in the back of the set, and a platform would fall. So all these people start to rush in. Then you hear this voice, booming voice, calling out. It's Roger's voice. It's not in the shot. Don't worry about it. Take the shot.
How was Roger Corman to work for?
Inspiring and frustrating. He's really cheap. And he doesn't budge. I mean, the thing you say more often than anything else is "but Roger." But he achieved greatness in his career and through an abundance, and really smart, and really forged classy as independent / exploitive, being movie realm. He was the top. Canada had more money, and every now and then they had better movies, but they spent a much, much more money. He's not even close. And for their lower budget films, there were action films, but it was a different company. They were more of a middle ground thing. But Roger was the class because he was a really good director. I mean, he had some of the films. I mean, Bucket of Blood is one of my favorite films ever. And it has the best line ever in a movie, which is Dick Miller's line. He's the sculptor above the coffee house, and he's trying to sculpt the face, and he says, "Come on, be a nose, be a nose." And I worked with Chuck Griffith later, and he was directing Gail Ann Hurd's first movie, Smokey Bites the Dust, but he hates second unit directors. They're always trying to prove himself to Roger. And Roger only hires directors on their way up or on their way down to the same price and the same kind of risk. Director, you risk talent, and the director on his way down risk attitude. Are they really going to stick on? Are they going to try? And the young guys just want to try. They're irritating to the old guys.
How did Celluloid Wars, the making of Battle Beyond the Stars, come about for you?
I had written my novel prior to that to uncover my past, so I was used to writing every day. And I wanted to make sure that the next movie I did was a good one. I was tired of having movies fall apart for one reason or another. Bad sound effects, bad distribution plans, bad title, whatever. I had done 9 movies or 8 movies, number, but I wanted something good. And I knew going back to Roger, there was going to be political battles left and right, because the only way to prove yourself, everybody wants to direct, everybody. And everybody has an equal shot, because in Hollywood, actually, the most common director is a first-time director in features. 50%, at least in those days, were first-time directors. Then it goes down after that, So so everybody, the only way to get ahead is to put down the person above you. And you do it until it starts happening in you and you can see it. so I knew I had to understand all the battles and I had to win the battle. And the Caine Mutiny was a really influential book for me as a youth. And the person running the ship was nuts and not the person in charge, is the lieutenant or the ensign, Kellogg, I think his name, keeps a journal so he could understand who to follow. I follow orders or do I follow what's right, for the Navy or whatever, for the ship. And when I was learning film, my teacher for theater was making up film education, and it was great. Like the first book I read was Jean Cocteau's journal, diary of a film, that he kept on the making of Beauty and the Beast. And it was all about special effects and all the nurses, the pain, all the things that went wrong. And it was a wonderful book. So that was my inspiration, because that guy, he kept that journal. So it somehow gives you power for the next day. And I didn't want to lose. I just had to win. So I did it. But I would write at midnight all the time. I was like, when my girlfriend, no wife, for 42 years, was asleep, that's when I typed. It was a loud typewriter. She didn't mind. I worked it out. And I have the original type manuscript too. But I didn't think it was a book. I was actually intending to write a book. The original title, once I got into it, was, from my point of view, editing the invisible art. Just didn't know about B movie editing at all. So I wanted to sell it. There's just as much art in B movie editing as there is in A movie editing. In fact, sometimes more, because A movies, it's like a lot of the time is trying to choose the best shot amongst 5 different versions of great performances. And in B movie editing, mostly because of the time crunch, how do you make a performance much different?
So when did you manage to get this published, or how did you manage to get this published?
I was teaching at USC as an adjunct for fun, because I was still a full-time editor at that point. And so I'd switched into documentary feature editing as a film doctor. And so I went to the national conferences and met all the publishers, and they, first of all, had no interest in B movies or Roger, and they had no interest in a journal and no interest in editing, basically. So I was losing on every count. I was, I guess, about 16 years ago. I've been working as a film doctor. Probably I shouldn't broadcast that, because other people know that you saved their movie, but that's what I do, whether it's documentary or thriller and horror. So I was working on this movie called The Blob Fish, which was about obesity. And I hired this graphic artist. The movie I saved before that was an army movie called Area of Conflict that had possibly 1,000 gunshots. And I had to cut the sound too. It was just awful. Anyway, he did the poster for it. So I went to him for the poster for Blob Fish. We got to talking in the lobby, and I told him about the book I had, and just he had told me that he published graphic novels and made graphic novels. So he read the book and thought it could be great with the graphic novel treatment, and I loved that idea.
The book looks fantastic, and it's super striking. So it's funny to hear how that came about, because that was definitely a question as well. And you said that you're working on part 2, or you finished up part 2?
Well, part 2 has been ready since 1982. Although I did write when Roger Corman died. And the picture that's online of Arrow Movie Theater saying "Hail to the Chief," I shot that. I didn't know that they would publish it, but I shot it and I gave it to Bill, and he put it on Instagram, and then they picked it up. But Bill's working on the artwork. We have actually Chris Horner, the production designer. I met with him a year ago, and he had photographs I didn't know existed, negatives of crews working, are just great. I mean, it's so funny to see all these guys with their shirts off, with poles and this little monster thing, and the camera people up on the roof of the building. It's just great seeing all these young people in a situation with no money. And there's a great shot where the mutant head is in the hallway, and this little, because an art director person is just the hallway eating something. It's just really exhausted. And while the robot, it's really, I wrote it as one book. One of my titles was Welcome to the Roger Corman School of Film. That's what Roger told me, because when I finally saved Battle, I asked him to direct. 8 times he asked me to cut Galaxy of Terror. And I said, Roger, I've done, the 8th time I said, Roger, I've done everything I could for you as an editor. I want to direct. And he said, can you stutter and direct? And I said, I stutter less when I'm directing than I'm in control, but I still stutter, but it's in the act of communicating, which is more than most directors do. And he said, you have a point there, Alan. I'm going to put you through the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking.
Do you have a date for when that's going to be out?
Bill gave me a date a few months ago. He does everything graphically. It just takes time, so I'm hoping, it's like, it's close. He made a little announcement a couple of months ago. He was getting close, but he moved his office and he relocated in South Carolina, Glendale, but everything is remote anyway. And I'm hoping, I'm not counting, I wanted to finish my autobiographical movie, which is called Celluloid Wars. Well, ultimately, at the end of the book, I say, go watch the movie for the whole story. Because the book is really just about trying to shoot the movie, and then that infamous last sneak preview when Roger punched the guy. But we should be talking more about battles, unless you want to hear that story since Malone.
Oh, I would love to hear that story. Yeah, I don't think I know that one.
I was in the editing room waiting, starting to cut Crazy Mama when Death Race 2000 was in his final edit. And Roger had taken a lot of the comedy out. It was still wound up being quite funny, but he was taking a lot of the big laughs out because he didn't like to mix. He basically saw it as a horror film because nuns were being pulled. And didn't want the laughter, didn't want it, because when you're dealing with a mixture of humor and horror, you have to get good word of mouth. And Roger's distribution pattern does not allow for any of that, because the plan is to make a limited number of prints, the most would be 200. They tour, and you're in town for a week, maximum 2. And if it's really a hit, you go 3, but you plan on 2, and you're shipped away. So you can't depend on, and your audience doesn't look at reviews anyway. Your audience is a drive-in audience. Not that it's that type, and it's a date audience because girls get scared in horror. And the comedies are silly. They go for all the car company. So Paul was kind of hiding that, but Roger caught it, started taking stuff out. And I watched how painful that was. So when it came time, and when you've got someone who gets killed every 7 minutes and there's sex every 5 minutes, and the monster grows and grows, and I don't know, it's like, you got to have some humor, otherwise, you got not, you don't want the characters to be silly, but you want, as a filmmaker, you want to go touch that extreme thing so you get people to laugh while they're still on edge, And American Werewolf in London had just come out, and so it made it okay. It's really hip to do that. It's cool. You get away with it. Like now it's mainstream. There's an audience for that, or an established film with that. And so I asked everyone at a screening for Roger, and the screenings were all at his company, only sat 8 people. And I asked anyone who was in the screening, because I knew all of them, not to laugh. And they honored that. And so Roger never heard a laugh until the sneak preview. And all the years I worked for him, he never had a sneak preview. I didn't anticipate that at all. And it was at the Culver Cinema, which is a big cinema now. Now it's a fourplex. And they were showing movie Violations. And it was on like a Friday night. Pretty big house. And the screening announcement was just on a little cardboard that said sneak preview mutant. That's it. And it was like this big. So the audience was suddenly seeing a movie they didn't expect to see. Plus, they had just installed new aisle lights, and they didn't know how to turn them off. So the audience was kind of lit. You could see everybody. Anyway, I was standing in the back of the theater, as I usually do, and they went nuts. And just before I got the job, I had to do additional scenes for a Kung Fu movie, and I did the love scene and the chase scene for Firecracker. And in the chase scene, I had the woman lead. This was an article of clothing at every skirmish. And I got a standing ovation in Hollywood for that. So like, it was like, I was able to do it again with this. And I was like in the back of the theater thinking, this is it, I did it. And Roger comes storming up the aisle, goes right past me with his head opposed. And there's a guy in the back of the theater yelling at the screen, and Roger stands over him. And he waits for him to say something, and he punches him like this in the face, much harder than that, and goes, "Stop laughing. This is a serious sci-fi movie." And he stands over like this, and the rest of the audience is going nuts. So he comes in, storming up to me out of the theater, going, "Allan, this is the worst sneak I've had in 23 years, but don't worry, I know how to save it." I said, "Save it. It was great." And we argued outside the theater about good comedy versus bad comedy. And that's when all the young people suddenly show how much they know about film by agreeing with Roger, et cetera. And some people were pretty loyal, but it didn't matter. He said, be there and there tomorrow to make the changes or have someone else do it. And the guy who he punched, he's supposed to leave, and he's in a suit with his wife and another couple. And the guy who he punched was really big, comes out carrying a large coat, and he throws it at Roger, hits him square in the back, and Roger turns like this, and he goes, "No, we're even." And he walks away. And so I had to take out that, and we screened it again on Hollywood Boulevard, and they still laughed, and did it again. And then we screened it in Torrance, and no one came. But most of the film that's out, that's been out, is still funny, because most of the humor is in exaggeration and in idea and concept. It's just that, when I did this montage, that was probably got the most laughs when, the monster gets killed with tumor because he gets killed with cancer. And the main lab guy, played by Fox Harris, as a chain smoker, and then he discovers that he has cancer, and cancer can kill the mutant. So he has the main lab guy take his tumor out to feed it to the mutant. And I had witnessed, I was editing in the Philippines, psychic surgery where they actually pull the tumor out. So I replicated that in an exaggerated way. So he sends off the young girl, Don Dunlap, to get morphine. So she's in the hallways. But the mutant comes out and starts to chase her, so they don't have time. So he's got to use a mat knife. So he has to come up with a mat knife and then pull the tumor out. So there are lots of cuts to that, lots of screams from, he doesn't have painkiller. Meanwhile, the young girl is being chased by the mutant. So it's a chorus of screams. And I think I had up to 15 screams going. And when you hear that many screams, the guy scream, the girl scream, the guy scream, and they're real screams. I mean, they really got into it. And it's all visually really exciting. And it's like, by the 8th scream, you're laughing, So and by the 15th, you're uproarious. So he cut half the screams. It's still funny. The first one is funny, but you don't get that it's supposed to be funny, that sort of thing. And it's like he dropped the first line that tells you this is going to be funny. So they have to get into this clean room before they go into the lab. And, it's low budget, right? So I took a carnation box that you could see through, and did an overhead shot with a color. And so it comes over with this blue color with a buzz. And the astronaut goes, and this is a futuristic film, He goes, "What is this, microwave?" And the guy says, "No," and he has another line, but that line was this microwave right at the beginning lets you know to laugh, and took that out. So like the signal to laugh was never there. The humor is discovered, but it's, so I can never work for him again. I do one, and he offered me 3 more things to direct. I just couldn't be, he just, I felt credit, but I wrote maybe, 16 pages on that night. It's like I wrote when it happened to. I didn't like recover and then write with perspective. I didn't want that writer for that. But writing for the moment, as long as you open up and say what you feel and put in the work, the right emotion comes out. At one point in the part 2, I realized I'm the mutant. That's
when or how can people see Celluloid Wars, the movie that you just did about yourself?
I just finished it, so it's not for the public. I'm trying to, if you know of a film festival it's really hard to try to figure out how to sell it to a film festival because it is part disability. The stuttering, is, and I'm also writing my memoir, and like the thing to really get into, the first is called How I Lost My Virginity as a Stutterer. The last chapter is how I survived how as a stuttering director. Because at one point, after meeting Julia Phillips, discovered me. Because it was fun, because Harry Ufflin, who represented Scorsese and De Niro or Ridley Scott, his son was the PA on Mutiny, and his job was to get the 200 dead animals in the beginning that are killed. And his father was really intrigued by someone who would start a movie with that. And so he wanted to see it, and he brought Julia Phillips with him. And she declared me the next Scorsese Spielberg and attached me to a script similar to E.T. that she and Spielberg came out of Close Encounters with a mission to make an extraterrestrial film for kids. So they were competing, although I really didn't know how to see inside. And she introduced me around Hollywood as a stuttering director. And Sidney Pollack, the deal with TriStar, first started, had to approve of me as a stuttering director, which he met with him, and he didn't mention stuttering at all. He just said, "What's your take on the movie?" He told me, he said, "That sounds good." And she was supposed to be off of cocaine. She wasn't. And it was discovered, and they canceled the movie. I just left in the lurch. But so I needed to get accepted at film festival. When I finished the movie the first time 10 years ago, it was called Cut. And, I've won, I think, 6 film festivals with 9 different feature documentaries. And I got rejected everywhere. Didn't get to a single film festival, even the ones that I had won before. If you're making a film about myself, it just doesn't sell. You just don't. And now it's a little more hip to do that, but, and it's not, handicap nature of stuttering isn't enough to beat all the other handicaps that are out there that make brilliant movies, and they're shot in 4K and done to be produced. This is done all through archival stuff and stuff like generated. And it's, but it's got to be seen to be appreciated. And it's seen, it's very difficult. So I'm just starting, I just finished it really the day before yesterday. So I just put up a video, and I'm happy for you to see with a passport. If any of your fans want to see it, I'm happy to send them an email or send you an email and send to them with a password. And I'm happy to get feedback and people to talk about it. I just can't release it. One day I will, but I've made actually quite a few movies that are sitting on the table. One is, it was about Marilyn Monroe that I made with the Marilyn Monroe fan club. And each person had a personal story, not that they share with her, but they carry about her. And it's so intimate. And she stuttered.
Oh, I did not know that.
That's how she developed that voice.
Is the best place for people to keep up with you your website, allanholzman.com?
Not really, but if you add a Gmail, they can reach me. My website is there. It's not active, but you can see all the work. But there's no one contacting me. But it's my name at Gmail.
Mr. Holzman, thank you so much for your time. This was so great talking with you.
It was great talking with you, and I hope we can do it again.
All right, we are back, and we're talking about Battle Beyond the Stars.
By the end of the movie, it is a bit much. The body count is rather high. And look, like I appreciate and get that it incorporates stakes into it, because in Star Wars, the body count is not high at all. Really, what we get, like one character. It's one character a movie is what it feels like.
What body count?
You got Alderaan, right? And then all those poor stormtroopers that signed on, and they're just like, what? They're going to blow up the entire space station I'm working on?
Biggs and Porkins bite it, but then we've just met them, haven't we?
I mean, really, the only character of any consequence was Grand Moff Tarkin.
Or Ben Kenobi, but I guess Ben Kenobi doesn't even really die.
Becomes more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
But that's the thing for me, with this movie, is the body count's kind of high. I'm ambivalent about it. I was curious what y'all thought, because pretty much everybody dies into the movie. I mean, I get it. I get what your inspiration was, but man, you didn't have to. That didn't have to be part of the inspiration. I'm glad that they went there with it, but man, the body count for this movie is rather high. And then the movie's ending just kind of goes, and they're all with us forever. What the fuck? The ending of this movie is abrupt, to say the least.
That was the thing I liked looking into when it came to doing the research for this, was why is that ending so abrupt? And apparently they just were like, hey, John Sayles, can you come back and write us a new ending for this? Because the original, after the fight is done, we cut to a landing field and we've got Shad is there, Nanelli is there, and then also Nestor is there. And Nanelli is like, are you going home? Nestor says, we must never return there. The risk of bringing disease is too great. And she says, that's sad. And he goes, we are there now, just as the others are here, where one is, all are. And Nestor says to them when they offer to stay, they say, your congenial forms and your Varda are good. You have a lovely but rather dull planet. We must seek adventure. And then, okay, good luck to you, Nestor. Kelvin is even there, and Kelvin starts playing with children and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, that's nice. That was my moment. When Cowboy dies, it's like, oh man, shit just got real.
It's a lot. By the end of it, everyone dies. Kind of a seemingly an ignominious death, too. Other than the spaceship. It's bye, apparently.
Oh, and Nell survives as well. So I wanted to put that out there.
St. Eggsman comes in. Everyone treats her like a fucking joke. And yet, it's her. She's the one who saves the day. And by the way, speaking of movies that inspire other things, not just James Horner ripping off himself, but Independence Day, I think that's her. Randy Quaid's character is just St. Eggsman, isn't it?
Totally. She is amazing. She is absolutely amazing. And I love that she's kind of playing this Toshiro Mifune character. And with Mifune, they just kind of treat him like he's a fool. Eventually kind of, add some stuff to the battle, if memory serves. It's been decades since I've seen The Seven Samurai. I wanted to see it. It was playing at the Detroit Film Theater last year, and I missed it, which kills me. But this whole thing of oh, she's just a joke. She's just a gnat. She's just, bothering people. And they never, once she gets to the planet's surface, they kind of embrace her, but they still kind of treat her like a joke. And like you said, she's the one, she's the purest. And I love this whole thing too of how they based her character on those Native American guys who would battle with people. And basically it was if I can humiliate you, I've won the battle. And so this whole thing of her just beaming light at him and being like, hey, great, thank you for the battle. You've just basically been bested by St. Exian of the Valkyrie. Yes, that is wonderful. And like you said, fucking saves the day, man. I think that's wonderful, because I don't think Mifune saves the day. And I know for sure that the guy who is in the Mifune role doesn't really save the day in the Magnificent Seven either. But boom, here we are with her. And fucking Sybil Danning, 1980. Holy shnikes.
She could be now.
And I love how they have her laying back in the ship and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that looks very awkward. It's like she's driving a lowrider.
Molded seat for her, just so we can look over the valley of her breasts at all times.
And then the other outfit, which just looks like a big piece of bandage that wraps around her, not like Lilu type bandage. It's almost like more electrical tape going up and down her. I'm like, okay, there you go. Wendy O. Williams of the Plasmatics.
Is there nothing this movie can't do?
I think I'm just impressed by the amount of distance that they go with the $2 million budget.
Which a lot of, by the way, went to Papard and Robert Vaughn.
I know, which is the even crazier part.
So they're working at a huge deficit with that $2 million, and then still they delivered all of this.
When I went back and rewatched Magnificent Seven, I noticed the idea of the break in the final fight. Because this movie, again, no wasted scenes. We get these 7 warriors probably by middle of the film? And then there's barely any time that they spend on Akir before they then have this battle with Sador. And the battle goes on for a while. We lose some people. And then we kind of regroup. And I like this regrouping moment on the planet before we have the next installation of the battle. And then like the people that didn't die before are about to die now, except for our 2 heroes, thank God. But it's just, I love that little pause in between. And it's very similar to what they did in Magnificent Seven as far as, okay, the first battle's over. Oh, we heard something's going on over here. So they run away or they go away. Actually, I think they get kicked out of the town because they're accused of doing some stuff. Anyway, and then they eventually come back and there's Eli Wallach there just waiting for them. And I'm like, okay, that's nice that we had this little bit of a respite between. So it's not just boom, 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 boom. To your point, Chris, the idea of the ending being so abrupt is a little tough for me sometimes too, because it's like, no, I want to see them celebrate. I don't need them to get fucking medals like Star Wars or anything, but it's just like, let's see a little bit of the new life on Akir.
They kind of don't have a moment of everybody acknowledging that everybody else died. It's just kind of, I mean, there is, it's literally the last line of the movie. It's like, and they'll be with us forever. All right. Feels a little bit like a forced cop-out.
It's kind of like the end of Seven Samurai, right? It's, that's the battle ends and we don't really spend any more time with anybody. We just get shots of the swords sort of that have been stuck into the earth in memoriam of those who have fallen, and then that's the end.
I mean, I guess that didn't have to be something you drew an inspiration from Seven Samurai.
This movie did not need to be a one-for-one remake. Like, at this point in the movie that we've gotten with all of these characters that we have now fallen in love with only 1 or 2 scenes, maybe we can commiserate with them and or celebrate.
Just a moment, just a little bit more. I don't need the whole yub-nub scene or like cutting to everybody celebrating around the galaxy kind of bullshit. Poor Shad, too, when you think about it. Like I said, like Julie Duffy as his sister basically kills his own sister.
Or has Robert Vaughn kill her, yeah.
Shad has lost almost everything because Nell's gone now. Zed's gone.
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
His sister's gone. It's like now he's got this new girlfriend at least, but it's like, what is life going to be like for you now? And now he's the Corsair that Zed was. Like, he's the only one that has taken a life, which is really something sacred for them. And they're I guess the Varda must be like their holy book or their holy sayings, because sometimes it feels like they switch when it comes to like articles and stuff. It's like the Varda or your, I don't know. It just seems like they refer to it oddly.
I just think that was their religion. I don't know that it was necessarily a text. Although it could refer to a text, I think it was just sort of the overall, it's their version of the Force, I'm sure.
Yeah, or the closest approximation anyway.
At least they don't say, may the Varda be with you.
And also with you.
I mean, none of this feels Star Warsy enough to even, like, it doesn't feel Star Warsy at all.
No, I didn't even include this. I wrote a big article years ago about Star Wars ripoffs. I didn't include this film because to me, this is not it. Stuff like, was it Richard Kiel, the humanoid movie that he had, or the one with Star Crash is amazing. There's all of these movies where I was like, no, this is a Star Wars ripoff. I don't consider this one to be a Star Wars ripoff. I think it was just there was an opening for sci-fi at that time. There's an appetite for it, and this is what they did. And I'm appreciative that it doesn't feel like just a Star Wars ripoff. Thank God there's no fucking lightsaber type battle or anything.
Could have easily gone there, and they could have gotten away, or not gotten away with it, but would have felt entitled to do because of they were remaking a samurai picture.
It could have been Sador going like, oh, I'm going to cut your legs off or whatever because I need your feet look better than mine or something.
Some misguided land battle. Don't do that.
Thank God.
We don't need a duel here.
Well, there's so many movies that have to end, yes, in a duel or a fucking fist fight. So many action films that I watch where it's like, oh, these guys have been like trading barbs and, doing all these things to each other through this whole movie. And then it ends in a fist fight on a boat. And it's like, okay, I really didn't need this.
Thanks for all the ingenuity up until now. And then
cool story, bro.
I love Battle Beyond the Stars. Everyone should see it. I'm shocked that given the proclivity of Corman to try to print as much money as he could, that they make $11 million off of this and that we don't get any version of a sequel. Obviously, he just kept making sci-fi movies and using all of the pieces of this movie, both on sets and through visual effects. Can I just say, by the way, that I used to live in Venice, California, on Rose Avenue, off of Rose Avenue, which is where Corman's studio was. So I would walk past Corman's studio every day to get to my car to go to work. And so in the parking lot, there were always a couple of pieces of things. There was always Frankenstein's car from Death Race 2000. And there was a piece of a ship from this movie. And come to find out, all of the interiors were also filmed there at the studio in Venice. And I never went in there, and now I could kill myself for not going.
I love those stories about how they were literally built. They weren't just building the sets at that time. They were building the fucking studio. When it comes to the Hammerhead ship, that they were using the tops and bottoms and sides of the actual studio itself. They had 3 stages, I think it was. So Gail Anhart says 2, Corman said 3. I tend to go with Corman on that one. But I think the third one was where they were shooting a lot of the model work and stuff. I love those stories. And I love the whole thing of we told the actors, don't lean against this because the paint's still wet. We're literally working on this until right now kind of thing. And the whole stuff of apparently there was a leak in the ceiling at some point, and there was water on the floor, and they said they were putting cables, all these electrical cables, just on apple boxes to try to keep them up and dry. And I'm like, God damn, all of these horrible things that are going on, and yet they still make this amazing work of art for me.
And it's everything you want when you think about making a movie. You want it to be all of that, the putting the apple boxes and the, dodging water and, I don't know.
We talked about it recently with some other things where the story behind the making of this movie is probably pretty wild. I don't know if it's wild in this case of this movie, but it definitely would be one worth hearing and reading about. Because again, like we've already all talked about and alluded to, this is a kind of filmmaking that it's very ground level, boots on the ground, people are, everybody's doing everything other than would seem the actors, the rummaging through trash cans and, making the most out of what they have. This is just, I don't know, watching something like this turning out as well as it does, it's pretty inspiring stuff.
In Germany, this movie is called Sador, Ruler of Space.
Pretty good title for a movie.
I do have to say, I always get Battle Beyond the Stars mixed up with Battle Beyond the Sun? And then there was Battle of the Planets or Battle of Planets? Battle of the Planets.
Yes. The anime.
That was the only anime I was watching as a kid.
I believe that's actually called Gotcha Man in Japan, but we knew it as Battle of the Planets, which, I mean, come on, Casey Kasem did the voice in the American version there.
Got it. I barely remember that. I just remember liking it and hating it all at the same time.
Oh my God, they had a ship, the Phoenix, and then each of the separate people had their own parts that would come in and out of the ship, motorcycles and race cars and shit. Oh my God, I fucking...
All right, we're going to take a break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
I'm going to go wherever you go. You know that.
Who said that?
Who said that?
Who said they were grackles?
Crackle.
They could be starlings.
That could be startling.
Is there a direction that you feel that you are drawn to?
Is there one you feel drawn to?
Where would we go?
They could be starlings. Everybody there knows, and they look at me in a certain way, and they talk to me in a certain way, in a way that you don't look at me yet.
Where would we go? I feel like you know.
That could be starlings.
They could be starlings.
Where would we go?
Somewhere bright.
How do you get there? How do you get there?
I'm gonna go wherever you go. You know that.
That's where we'll be back next week with a look at Upstream Color. Until then, I want to thank my co-host, Chris and Father Malone. So, FM, what is the latest with you, sir?
Check out everything I'm doing over at my show Midnight Viewing, where these two gentlemen join me every other week to talk about Tales from the Dark Side. But every Monday I do a show called Father Malone's Weekly Roundup, where I look at new streaming and or new releases in theaters. And then we've also got a show where we look at anthology films in general. And then HP from Night Mr. Walters and I are also looking at the movies of John Fusco. We're very busy. Midnight Viewing. Join us over there.
And Chris, how about yourself?
You can find everything that I work on over at weirdingwaymedia.com, where this show, my show, The Culture Cast, everything I work on can be found, other than the Rankin' on Bond, which Mike, you and I do once a month with our friend Richard Haddam, and Father Malone joins us from time to time, and we talk about James Bond. So if that's a thing you're into, cool. If not, just like, rate, and review this show on iTunes. And anything that you engage with from any content creator, regardless of whether or not they are with Weirding Way Media.
Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. As Chris said, they're all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world.